But, the news never stops in the NBA, especially right now in Brooklyn. Kyrie Irving is ineligible for the Nets preseason opener. Hear what James Harden had to say about how his absence affects the team. Plus, Miami may have the same Heat culture, but with new faces and a new hero, how much better are they from last season? LeBron has a reach far greater than basketball, and after hitting a 100 million milestone, we discuss his all-time influence in American culture. And want to see the most epic neighborhood ever? We'll show you the incredible NBA Lane promotion that has people buzzing. Get your popcorn ready. The Jump starts now. Friday Fun Day with the host of the Hoop Collective, Brian Windhorst, and our senior NBA writer, Ramona Shelburne, with us for the next hour. And guys, the Nets have their preseason opener tonight, and the team has listed Kyrie Irving as ineligible to play. Another indication he has not yet met New York's vaccination requirement. The Nets are prevented by law from revealing whether he has been vaccinated, but Kyrie has not been with the team for any of their practices in New York, where the city mandates vaccination to practice or play indoors. Here's James Harden on how Kyrie's absence impacts the team.
I want him to be on the team, of course. He's been a huge part of, since I've been here, a huge part of, our success, the success that we did have last year. And we kind of was finding a rhythm to whereas, that chemistry that we built, especially I can remember last year, that one road trip we had, we were just, me and Kyrie, and he's just a special talent that you don't really see often. So, of course, I would want him to be on the team, and, he's one of the reasons why I came here.
So, Ramona, we heard from Katie on Wednesday, now James Harden. What's your reaction to how they're addressing this situation right now?
I actually think at this point, this is going to come from the players on this team. James Harden, obviously very close to Kyrie Irving. Kevin Durant, very close to him. That's, Kyrie is really the one who pushed the Brooklyn option in the first place when they signed as free agents. And I think we get to this point where it becomes about, do you want to be there for your teammates? And there's so much the government can do here. There's so much the players union can do, so much the Nets organization, Steve Nash, Sean Marks, all those guys. But ultimately, this is going to be handled, if it's going to be handled, it will be handled by the players in that locker room. And I think it comes down to how long do the players on this team publicly support him the way that they have. And so far, Kevin Durant, James Harden have. But when he starts missing games, or if he starts missing games, how long will that support last?
And Brian, the team examined even moving their practices outside of New York to accommodate Kyrie, but ultimately decided to reject it for several reasons, including the need to have access to all their facilities. So how should Nets players and coaches handle Irving's absence and really continued questions regarding the matter?
Yeah, I'm going to evaluate them on their actions, not their words. I know, as Ramona has referred, that outwardly they have remained supportive, including Steve Nash, every single day. But their actions speak like they're an organization that's moving on, because they aren't moving their practices to accommodate him. And Steve Nash also said this week that they're really not discussing with him what he's doing on off days. I don't know if he's zooming into film sessions. I don't know if he's zooming into the practices. But, the fact that they're basically saying we're going to prepare for this season without you, and, I don't even know if he's even going to play in the road games, is them saying, Kyrie, we're here for you when you decide to join us, but we've got to move on.
Yeah, and to your point, Brian, Kyrie's availability in New York is not the only concern facing the Nets. For example, when in Toronto, Kyrie will be able to play in the game, but if Kyrie is caught leaving his hotel for anything not a team activity, he would face up to a $750,000 fine and possible jail time. So, Brian, should the Nets even allow Kyrie to play only road games?
So I know that this sounds like it would be simple, but it's actually, in my view and in talking to people, I think it's untenable. Because it's not just that he's not playing in the games. You guys know. He can't practice. And so that means the team can't be around him, can't see what he's doing, can't prepare for games. So just as an example, the last time Kyrie was with his teammates in a practice was October 2nd. That was last Saturday. They played on Sunday in LA, but he didn't play in that game. The next time they are going to be able to see him is going to be Monday for a game in Philadelphia. So that means that they will not have seen him for 8 or 9 days. I don't know how you can play a guy who hasn't been around your team for 8 or 9 days. But even if they do play him in that game, then they go back home until their opener. which is in Milwaukee 9 days later. So that means that Kyrie would have been around the team for one time in 16 or 17 days leading up to the opener. That's just leading up to the opener. Then they have a situation where the second week of the season, they've got a 6-game homestand where they're going to be in New York for 12 or 13 days, depending on when they travel. That would mean that they would go 12 or 13 days without seeing him. So how can they start him in their first road game after that in Detroit when they haven't even laid eyes on him in 12 days? They haven't practiced with him, no film sessions. That you just can't do that in the NBA. You can do that in a YMCA rec league, but you can't do that in the NBA. And the Nets have a good team. They can't be stuck, with this sort of around their ankles. And so I just don't think it's tenable.
I think what's been difficult about watching this is you see how people's public, they keep saying, we don't want this to be a distraction. But every single day they are there and he is not. That's all the questions that they get asked therefore it is a distraction. You can try not to talk about it as much as you can. And so as you point out, like they can play. And if there's one team in the NBA who I think could actually withstand something like what you're describing, Brian, where, gone for a week, come back in a week, we'll see it when you get here. It probably would be the Nets. They somewhat did that last year with all the injuries they had and everybody in and out of that lineup. But it's Kyrie isn't the only person on this team who had to make the same decision about vaccination. There are other players on this team who may have been hesitant about it, and they are all there now. And so there was an optimism a couple of weeks ago that Kyrie would be there. You still hear it in Kevin Durant's voice. We're optimistic he's going to play. James Harden said we're optimistic he's going to play. But at some point, it really isn't going to come down to the NBA or the local governments or the front office making Kyrie do anything he doesn't want to do. It's going to come down to his friends. I mean, he's really close to Kevin Durant and James Harden. They wanted to play together. They want to win a championship together. And that is, that's going to be the ultimate arbiter here.
And another layer, guys, is the fines. And NBAPA Executive Director Michelle Roberts said publicly to the New York Daily News earlier this week, quote, "They've been reporting that we've agreed that if a player who was not able to play because of this non-vaccination status, they could be dock pay. We did not agree. The league's position is that they can," and then finished the statement by saying, "We'll see." So this threat of dock pay, Brian, where does that stand?
Well, from talking to agents and other people involved with the league office, it's a gray area in the CBA. And so the league is, sort of taking one position on it. The union is taking another. But in the interim, he's not going to get his payment. Now, they have a procedure to deal with disputes. You go to arbitration, but that's going to take months. And, they may not get an answer that they want. They may get an answer that they want. But in the interim, as Kyrie has to figure out what he's doing, every time he misses a home game, it's going to be $380,000 out of his paycheck. And whether he gets that back or not is to be determined maybe in a date far in the future.
Brian, but this is playing out across America with workers who are losing their jobs when there's a vaccine mandate, either at their workplace or in the city they live in. And these lawsuits are they're being litigated right now in real time. So when you say it's a gray area and it's unprecedented, it really is. The players' union's job is to stick up for players like Kyrie Irving who may find themselves in this situation. That's their job. They are essentially this is a union. There are lawyers there whose job is to fight for those things. I think it would go to arbitration. I'm not sure how it will come out. So far, vaccine mandates have held up. People have been fired. But this is all a gray area in this country right now. And so I think that's where Michelle Roberts' quote is coming from.
By the way, Kyrie Irving has 2 years, $71 million left on his contract. Also has a player option next summer that will allow him to be an unrestricted free agent, just for context. Meanwhile, onto the developing story regarding 18 former NBA players that were charged Thursday with pocketing about $2.5 million illegally by defrauding the league's health and welfare benefit plan. FBI agents across the country arrested 15 former players and one of their wives in a 3-year conspiracy that authorities say started in 2017. U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss said prosecutors have travel records, email, and GPS data that proves the former players were sometimes far from the medical and dental offices at the times when they were supposedly getting treated. In one instance, she said a former player was playing basketball in Taiwan when he was supposedly getting $48,000 worth of root canals and crowns in Beverly Hills, California. In a statement, the NBA said the benefit plans provided by the NBA and the National Players Basketball Association to their players are critically important to support their health and well-being throughout their playing careers and over the course of their lives, which makes these allegations particularly disheartening. The NBA also said they will cooperate fully with the U.S. Attorney Office in this matter.
Huh?
Nick Nurse forgetting that Kyle Lowry isn't on the Raptors anymore. Guess old habits die hard. Ramona, how many more times this season do you think he'll have that mix-up?
At least 2 or 3. Look, Kyle Lowry is an institution there. And I think this franchise is, they knew this day was coming. We all thought it was going to happen last year at the trade deadline, but it's
Selfishness. LaMelo doing more LaMelo things last night against the Grizz. Pair of sweet dimes. Brian, must-see TV?
That is an incredible pass. I mean, just like he'll get around the defender like that. But he also kind of gives a little no-look pass, too. You see, he kind of looks away.
He sure does.
Right at the end, just for a little flavor.
Do we have Brian? Brian, do you hear it?
I feel like every LaMelo highlight is sort of Ric Flair.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just.
Are you mesmerized?
Just LaMelo. I was just enjoying LaMelo. If you want the honest truth, I was just enjoying LaMelo.
I mean, that pass is like from the opposing free throw line there. Look, every time I see him, I want to do the Ric Flair. Woo!
And I'm going to enjoy watching LaMelo all year. I'm excited to see what he does. Make bang outs. Let's stay in Charlotte. Here's James Bouknight driving, hacking it. Ramona, why have there been so many absurd dunks already this preseason?
It's a preseason, so I mean, look, he didn't even put his hands up there.
Fair answer.
Like he's just like, I'm gonna get out the way.
There's a lot of business decisions happening here, and so the business when it doesn't count, you get out the way.
Trying to get hurt. You're not trying to get hurt there. I mean, get out the way. Yep. See.
That John Collins dunk could end up being the dunk of the year. I'm just going to be honest with you, and if it's going to be in the conversation, so you can peel off the preseason part of the John Collins dunk.
All right, let's talk in April though, and make sure that
Thursday.
our PAs are digging into the preseason crates. That's all I'm saying. Make finishes. Time for your daily John Moran highlights.
Oh my gosh,
these are under the rim finishes. Brian, what would it be like to have hang time like this?
Was there a game in the NBA last night other than the Charlotte-Memphis game? I'm fairly certain that there was.
We did have one on our air.
I feel like when I watch his highlights, I really like seeing him in slow motion because you don't always appreciate how awesome the dunk is until you slow it down.
Yeah.
But it's also fun to watch how explosive he is in real time, too.
Makes it look easy. Makes it look easy.
I do want to see in the dunk contest.
He was bothered by an ankle injury a lot last year. He was bothered by an ankle injury a lot last year. He's fully healthy now. That's my analysis.
There was another game, Brian. Heat Rockets missed qualifications. Jimmy gets the and one, limps over the bench, and Kyle Lowry takes it upon himself to massage Jimmy's thigh. Are we excited for all the Jimmy Kyle shenanigans this season? And my answer is yes, Ramona.
Oh, yeah. I mean, these guys they don't have boundaries. There are no rules or boundaries here.
I mean, these two guys are like two of the low-key funniest guys in the league. I mean, yes, they're intense, but they're going to be hilarious together.
You get to be funny the way they are when you're also as intense as they are.
Exactly.
That's the best courtside thigh massage since Steve Ballmer sitting courtside during a Clippers playoff game last year.
Whoa! Next.
That's fair. Let's talk about more about the Miami Heat, guys. They beat up on the Rockets last night.
Yep.
Yes, it was only a preseason game, but Tyler Hero has looked more like the player from the 2020 bubble. And Kyle Lowry, was his usual self, just in a different uniform, taking charges in games that don't matter. Here's Jimmy after the game on what he's seen so far.
I think everybody's still getting a feel when each other's out there on the court where everybody's going to be, what they're going to do. We had some careless turnovers, but it's just we haven't played that much together. I think we can switch a lot. We got a lot of guys that can handle the ball, obviously put it in the basket. We play so much faster. Kyle's not afraid to throw the ball ahead of everybody, move the ball extremely well. And then, like always, we got guys that can really shoot it.
Ramona, are the Heat championship contenders as of right now?
Well, Zach Lowe does his general tiers every year. I don't think they belong in that championship tier, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they make a run in the playoffs, because that is a team that is built for a 7-game playoff series. They are going to be really good defensively. I think they, obviously we know what Eric Spoelstra can do making adjustments, but they do have enough different looks that they can give you with the types of players they have now. We forget PJ Tucker's on this team now. That is, to have PJ Tucker and Bam Adebayo, two very switchy guys who can guard a lot of positions. Jimmy obviously can guard a lot of positions. That's a really dangerous team in a 7-game series.
I know they're going to defend. This is something that they've hung their hat on. Then they picked up Tucker and Lowry. The question is, can they score under pressure? And that's why the big thing for me for them is Tyler Hero. Is Tyler Hero going to be the guy of 1 year ago? This sounds so strange because
Yes.
1 year ago right now the NBA Finals are going on. Or is he going to be the guy of earlier this year when he was sort of just, he put up decent numbers, but he wasn't a difference maker? If Tyler Hero is the same type of difference maker he was in the bubble, and even if he doesn't play those kind of stats, even if he just is that kind of playmaker, it elevates this Heat team to another level, especially offensively, because sometimes they end up getting stuck where they need offensive playmaking. And to me, even though he's not one of the marquee guys on that roster, even though he's by salary probably like 7th or 8th, he is like arguably the most important player for the Heat, because as he lifts that team, their ceiling comes with him.
And look, the Heat are getting a lot of props even before the season. According to the annual GM survey, Kyle Lowry was the most impactful offseason move. The Heat had the best offseason, and Spo was named the best coach. Brian, do you agree with those three?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that general managers seem to like in this survey. They like it when you acquire veterans who play defense. If you go back and look, obviously if you acquire LeBron James or James Harden, you probably get that nod as well. But if you get veterans who play defense, those are the kind of guys you have that win at the highest level. And so the Heat picked up 2 of those guys, and they completely changed their dynamic when you add 2 guys to that locker room. And they, I know they had to give up Goran Dragic. It was not for free, but it's an upgrade to get a guy like Lowry. And there was a number of teams out there offering Kyle Lowry huge money. It wasn't just the Heat, and they kind of won one of the biggest derbies, if you will, for a free agent this summer, and that was getting Kyle Lowry, getting him committed and making that deal happen. And so I totally get why the GMs see it that way. And look, Eric Spoelstra is now the 2nd longest tenured head coach in the league behind Greg Popovich. He's extraordinarily respected. That goes without saying whether this honor was bestowed on him or not.
Yeah.
The other big free agent signing, I guess he wasn't technically a free agent, but keeping Duncan Robinson, $90 million for Duncan Robinson. That's your sharpshooter out there. And the question, when you pay a young player who's obviously undrafted and worked his way through the Heat system, Heat culture, he's the definition of that. Does he change? Does he give you the same kind of Duncan Robinson-ness, right? He creates that gravity on the floor. I think with Dunk, I'll go back to a fun Duncan Robinson story. When he was a rookie, he was hanging out with Ryan Anderson, and they were trying to get him to upgrade his wardrobe, upgrade what he was wearing. He went and bought like a really fancy bag, a nice fancy leather bag. He had it for a day or two. Felt kind of embarrassed, like this is not me. I just want to stick with my old gym bag, and returned it. Just return the Louis Vuitton bag.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that.
He's gonna be the same.
And we had this whole Heat
well
conversation. We didn't even talk about Bam Adebayo.
Oh, that's right. He's pretty good.
That's a conversation for another day. Regardless, the Heat can mess around. Now on ESPN.com, Tim, you were part of an article in which NBA teams and players could disrupt the races for home court advantage and awards during the 2021-22 season. So, Tim, let's start with the Western Conference. Which team do you think could disrupt the race for home court advantage?
Yeah, I don't think we should dismiss the Clippers as a threat just because we don't know when or if Kawhi Leonard will be back this season. Paul George is a perennial all-star who has a lot to prove. He's also a guy who has been, he's carried a team that's been at the upper level of a conference before, of course, with the Pacers in the Eastern Conference. I think they have a quality supporting cast around him. And then Terrence Mann really blossomed last postseason. If you're talking about a most improved player candidate, I think he'd be a good place to start.
Ramona, what do you think?
You know, I love Terrence Mann's quote the other day. Somebody said, "Are you flattered that people picked you for most improved?" And he goes, "You mean the GMs who didn't draft me? Nah, I don't care."
I like that, actually.
Yeah, he's a late second-round pick. You know, I actually like your Dallas Mavs. Tim out there, you're not going to pick your home team out there?
They were not eligible. The Disruptors had to be teams that we did not project to be in the top 6. So, look, they were projected towards the bottom of that top 6, but certainly I think they would also be in the mix for that.
Look,
for home court advantage.
To me, Dallas is the team with the most established superstar who had, I think, just an unbelievable playoffs, even though it was just that first round. But there were times in that series where Luka Doncic was the best player on that court. And I think with Jason Kidd as a coach, a new vibe around the team this year. They're treating Porzingis like they want him to be a basketball player. That was a good quote that they had the other day. I don't know if that's a good compliment or a backhanded compliment. But like there's a different vibe around the Mavs this year. Plus, I think last year they had a pretty bad COVID outbreak in the middle of the year that really derailed their season. Second half of the year they were much better, and especially into the playoffs.
So Brian.
Well, a bunch of people in this piece picked the Trailblazers because they feel like they could be elevated under Chauncey Billups, and I think there's a case to be made. But I think the biggest wild card in the whole Western Conference this year is Kawhi Leonard. You want to assume that he's going to be out for the year because you hear about torn ACL and you know the recovery timeline, but the whispers that keep getting louder in the league is that he looks great in his recovery and is, I don't want to say ahead of schedule because that's a kind of a hard thing to say, but that internally the Clippers haven't completely ruled out that he could come back. And if, especially with a play-in situation, even if he comes back late and he's able to give them something near his normal self, I mean, that could be the biggest move, trade deadline, off-season, whatever, when it comes to the Western Conference playoffs, if.
In that same vein, a wild card for them is Paul George and how he's going to perform with it being his team. So we will see. Let's move on to the East, the top 6 teams projections as the Nets, Bucks, Sixers, Heat, Hawks, and Celtics. So Brian, which team outside the top 6 could disrupt the race for home court advantage?
Yeah, I got to tell you, one of the teams I'm keeping an eye on is the Charlotte Hornets. I know that they aren't a team that you would say is a marquee team yet. Certainly they play in a market that doesn't get a lot of attention, but LaMelo is really a difference-making player, and typically we see young guards really start to impact winning and losing in their second season. The jump that guards make between year 1 and 2 is sometimes the biggest jump they make in their career, and he was already pretty darn good in winning Rookie of the Year. So they made some nice sort of low under the radar acquisitions. They traded for Mason Plumlee. They needed that kind of a big man. They signed Kelly Oubre to a reasonable contract. He's hurt right now, but they're not going to rely on him to score a ton, but he's going to help them win some games. So they kind of did some things around the margins, but I'm just wagering on LaMelo getting better, and I just think that in a tightly packed East, that improvement could separate them a little bit.
Tim, who are you looking at out East?
Well, I do think there's a pretty significant drop-off after that first 6, and I'm less confident in this after I heard Wendy because I agree with him. And really, it is about LaMelo Ball. When you look at teenage rookies who were clear-cut Rookie of the Year and had the kind of production he did, you're talking about LeBron James, you're talking about Luka Doncic. Those guys became superstars in their second season. I think he is ready to springboard to that status. That gives them a chance. Now, when you talk about the Hornets, jumping up into the middle of these playoff pack, they need a healthy Gordon Hayward all season long. And given his recent history, that's not a great bet.
Tim agreeing with Brian. That threw me off. I'm going to say the Toronto Raptors. Look, they're back in Canada now. I think there was no team more disadvantaged by last year's schedule. They were down there in Tampa all year. It was miserable. Speaking about teams that had awful COVID outbreaks that derailed the season. I mean, they got up to 4th place in the East, and then literally everyone got COVID or was out from health and safety protocols. They fell all the way down into the bottom of the Eastern Conference. But I think there's also some clarity that you have now, because there was this sort of, when is the Kyle Lowry era going to end all of last year? Now they have some clarity. It's Fred VanVleet, it's Siakam, it's the new group that they have. They have the same characteristics that you look for in those Raptors teams of old, which is just these long defenders, interchangeable players. There's some good young players that can take a step forward. So I like them being back home in Canada this year, and we forgot about them, right? They were down in Tampa all last year. I just forgot.
Speaking of forgot about them, I'm just gonna throw out the Hawks and Bulls and make them like a co-disruptor.
Yeah.
Just leave that there. Lastly, let's move on to the MVP, which is always a widely debated topic. Let's take a look at the list of MVP odds, courtesy of Caesars Sportsbook. And the top of the list consists of Luka, Giannis, Embiid, and KD. Momo, what player has the best chance to disrupt this list?
Okay. LeBron is on the list somewhere, but I'm actually going to go with his co-star in LA and say Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis let's just say he had a pretty awful year last year. Between injuries, even when he was on the court, that wasn't the Anthony Davis we saw in the bubble, but he was my MVP pick last year. And then obviously that didn't work out. They did not come back fresh and hungry off that championship. But I think he is now. And he's got two guys there in Russ and LeBron who are really pushing him. And he has a lot to prove. And so I think a healthy, motivated AD on a Lakers team that is projected to win the West, that's a pretty good sleeper.
Brian, who's your pick?
Boy, I thought underrated Devin Booker's season was over, but I guess not, because Devin Booker is not on that list. And I understand when you're playing with a guy like Chris Paul that it's going to be hard to win that award. I agree. But did anybody watch Devin Booker last year? Did anybody watch him in road closeout games dropping daggers on those teams? He was awesome last year. Totally took a step forward, plays and hunts for blood, and now he's had a taste of success. I don't know if he can win the MVP. I think he's a good bet at whatever odds number he is out there, because if the Suns play to their top potential, they could end up with the 1 seed, and that would mean that their players would be candidates to win it.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with a guy who has won an MVP, who was for a while a perennial top 3 finisher in MVP voting, and that's James Harden. He's not on this list because people look at Kevin Durant as clearly Brooklyn's best player, but Harden's production has not dropped off since his Houston days. His talent level has not dropped off. And look, we don't know if Kyrie's playing at all. I think it's reasonable to anticipate that Kevin Durant, there will be some load management there. I think James Harden will have the best regular season on a Brooklyn team that is likely to win the East. And look, he's been durable throughout his career until last season. He had the hamstring issues. He did not spend training camp in Atlanta and Vegas working with his personal trainers this year. So I anticipate that he'll have a much easier time staying healthy.
Also, he said that he may want to test free agency. Still hasn't signed that contract year. I like that pick, Tim. Thank you so much for joining on ABC. And with that, it's time to run it back. Top 3 plays of the WNBA Finals ever. Back in 2015, Maya Moore beats the buzzer in Indiana to steal Game 3 from the Fever.
Maya Moore, just a brilliant WNBA player, brilliant college player at UConn, doing great things in her life. But the Lynx, that was a dynasty for a while.
It really was. And how about 2016? Nneka Ogwumike.
This is on the road, by the way.
Yes.
On the road.
Against those Lynx.
Game 5, close game. Nneka Ogwumike with 2 offensive rebounds. Sparks win. Look at Magic holding the title up.
And then 1999. Teresa Witherspoon, iconic shot to steal Game 2.
Did she call back?
Can I just say that Teresa Witherspoon was one of the most intimidating, bad bleep players I've ever seen. She would kick your backside anywhere. She just owned that court when she was out there. I loved watching her play. She scared me. I didn't want any part of her sitting in the stands. I can't imagine trying to line up against her. She was awesome.
And then off the court, probably one of the nicest human beings.
Yeah.
Possibly.
And when she walks into that NBA locker room, those guys take notice.
Absolutely true.
For sure.
Look, now the WNBA season is coming to a close, but the NBA is kicking off its 75th anniversary season. And to commemorate, here's a look at the much buzzed about short film celebrating. Stop. What is your favorite part?
I think it was Devin Booker drives by and sees the Kobe mural. I mean, first of all, that's probably Devin Booker's actual car. He probably brought that to set. He's a classic car guy. But to drive by and see how he was going to honor Kobe Bryant and if you drive around LA, a lot of street murals, you see them everywhere, okay? And people don't know how street murals work. Usually they're up for 6 months, and then the owner of the building paints over them, does something new. Those are going to stay. Those Kobe murals everywhere all around LA, those stay up. Those aren't going anywhere. So I thought that was a great way of handling that, and that's my favorite part. Although I did kind of like Jerry West playing chess with Little Penny. I would not have had that on the board.
Little Penny was my favorite part. Brian, what was your favorite part?
Well, I think it was a little bit of a nod or, a little bit of shade thrown at Kyrie Irving when they threw that line in there, the globe has no corners. A little Kyrie wasn't there, but he was sort of there in spirit. But to be honest with you, the logistics of this, I know that's not what I'm supposed to be thinking about. I'm supposed to just enjoy it. But the COVID time logistics to get and all these people's schedules and 2 seasons jamming in and the Olympics, because there's a bunch of Olympians who were in there. How they put all that together, they filmed it all these different places and edited it together. I was just impressed with that.
I also do want Dirk to have done the skyhook. I was like, oh, he would be great at that.
Absolutely. Look, you can nitpick and say maybe Shaq should have broke the backcourt and where was Michael Jordan, not Michael B. Jordan, but it was incredible. And the behind the scenes, as you mentioned, had to be just special. Here's a look actually at a magical moment between Magic and Trae Young.
Did your thing, man. That playoff was stupid. Okay, I want some more of that, all right?
The playoff was stupid. That was a good line. Awesome.
Magic wanted to be able to say things like that. That's why, if he was still part owner of the Lakers or GM, he would get fined for tampering there for that, just being in it.
Okay, up next.
Well, that would be better for him to put stuff like that on his